Welcome to Semcast at Concordia Seminary, St. Louis. I'm Dale Meyer. Joining me is Reverend Bill Hecht, an alumnus of Concordia Seminary, and now serving the church through his work within the government. Welcome, Bill. You're here because you are being given the award of Distinguished Alumnus of Concordia Seminary. When you consider that over the years of this seminary, 167 years, over 12,000 pastors have graduated to serve. The award that you're receiving at our commencement is very significant. So congratulations to you for that.
Thank you very much. It's a distinct honor and privilege for me to be here and to receive this award. It's been 46 years ago since I graduated from Concordia Seminary.
Really? And you have probably had more experiences in those 46 years than a lot of us have had. Where were you raised?
In South Georgia. Actually, I grew up, we didn't have a Lutheran church in Tifton, Georgia when I was growing up. I had to listen to the Lutheran Hour every Sunday. And I finally got confirmed after I went to a year at Auburn University.
Do you know what led you to Concordia Seminary in the ministry?
Well, that summer my dad insisted that I go down to West Palm Beach, Florida, where my Uncle Elmer was managing some theaters down there, and I finished my confirmation instructions. And Pastor Schumacher was a very good pastor, and I got interested. It was late, but he got me on the train, and I went up to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and started, and I really knew I wanted to do something for really the first time in my life, I guess, that I knew what I wanted to do.
Now, Fort Wayne, Indiana was a preparatory school,
college. It was a prep school at the time.
And when you finished there, then you came here to St. Louis.
I went to school here 4 years and 1 year vicarage.
And while you were here, you played baseball.
Played baseball, and I, of course, worked at 2 or 3 jobs while I was here. I worked at Zern's Art Galleries for many years, and Ted Drew's frozen custard stands, and sold Christmas trees, and sold men's clothes out in Webster Groves.
On your visit back here to St. Louis now to receive your honor, did you get a chance to go to Ted Drew's and have a frozen custard?
I haven't yet, but we have been to Steak and Shake, and we'll probably get over to Ted Drew's before.
Well, I hope you enjoy it, and personally, since you have been a friend for many years and a great blessing, I certainly hope that you enjoy your visit here. Where did you serve in the ministry?
Well, I started out in Mount Vernon, Illinois. I was there for 3 years, and then I got a call to be the campus pastor at the University of Oklahoma, where I built a chapel there. The congregation did while I was serving them. I worked on my PhD in philosophy, taught philosophy, and at the same time started St. John's Lutheran Church over in Moore, Oklahoma.
And how did you then get into the government work that you've been doing for 35-some years?
Well, I suppose a better description would say into the political world, since I've only had 1 government job, but which was just a few years. But I got very concerned about the country, the communist threat, and the fact that we thought morality in government and that sort of thing was on the decline. And my wife and I decided we ought to try to do something about it. And just out of the blue, I got the opportunity to serve as executive director of the Republican Party in the state of Missouri. As a matter of fact, the very day I signed up at noon for that job, that night I was called to be the head campus pastor at the University of Wisconsin, but I'd already accepted this, and so I worked there through the campaign that got Nixon elected, and I met John Ashcroft at the time, who was president of the JCs. He eventually got involved. I ran Kit Bond's first campaign for Congress, which fortunately we lost because he went on to be auditor and governor and senator now. Anyway, it was a great experience for me. And then I actually went to Washington, the only government job I ever had, where I worked for Congressman Dick Eichord of Missouri, who was chairman of the House Committee on Internal Security, where we were investigating a lot of internal communist threats in the country and communist infiltration, especially into the anti-war movement at the time. And from there I became a lobbyist.
A lobbyist? Whoa, that is a very suspicious suspect job. Tell us about lobbying.
Well, it actually shouldn't be, because the framers of our Constitution specifically reserved the right, in my opinion, for lobbyists when they told us in the First Amendment that we had the right to redress our government. And obviously it's impossible for all of the hundreds of millions of individuals to get there, so they have to band together either in corporations or trade associations or cause-oriented groups and hire someone to represent them and lobbyists to plead their case to the congressmen, senators, and the administration.
The value of a lobbyist, and a good lobbyist, was demonstrated some years ago by your involvement in our church's radio station. Could you give us a little history of that to demonstrate that the church also benefits from lobbying efforts?
Well, actually, over the years, since the Missouri Synod has never had a lobbying presence in Washington whatsoever, they have called on me from time to time when they had some particular problem. One was when we had a problem with the radio station, and we were being sued by the FCC, and we successfully won that. Paul Devontier came down. We made a lot of visits, a lot of congressmen, a lot of senators. And
Paul Devontier was the general manager of KFUO.
he was the general manager of KFUO, but I believe he was in charge of the synodical.
You're right. Communications.
Communications.
You're right. First he managed the station, and then he became the communications executive for the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. You're right.
Right, and this was a pure and simple matter of religious freedom. Of all things, they were saying that we couldn't hire people of the Lutheran faith for a Lutheran radio station. I mean, what a revolting idea. But this is the left-wingers in society go after those sort of things. I mean, as if Catholics can't hire Catholics for their radio stations, or Jews if they had a radio station, or whoever else. But we fortunately won the case, and there have been many, many examples of that over the years. We had a problem over in Taiwan when we were about to lose $150 million worth of our church property. I got a lot of congressmen and senators interested and concerned about that, especially the two from Missouri, and Senator Conrad Burns from Montana, who is a Missouri Synod Lutheran, was extremely helpful in both the KFUO case and also in the case in Taiwan, which we have that problem solved now. And of course we have visa problems from time to time, and as a matter of fact, since we have been there, my wife has represented a couple different LCMS presidents in meetings with the President of the United States because they had no one in Washington to do it, and she has done that. And along with my efforts as a lobbyist, I have about a dozen or 15 clients. I have found time to help the church when they call on me, and obviously as a volunteer.
One of the themes that emerges as you're talking about church and world is the two kingdoms, and how sometimes the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, we haven't taken advantage of the two kingdoms doctrine in our life. Could you talk about the two kingdoms and what they mean for us as citizens in the United States?
Well, yeah, I think that's a very important question, because Luther was very clear on the distinction between the kingdom of the left, kingdom of the right, and church and state. But we're a member of both kingdoms. And sometime I'm afraid that clergymen and even Lutheran congregational members don't realize that they're citizens also, and they have a very serious responsibility to involve themselves in their government if it's going to run right, if it's going to be on a moral level, and if it's going to accomplish the things that they would like to have it accomplish, then you have to get involved. And this was one of the main reasons that I decided to get involved, because I thought that it's very important that we have a Christian influence in our government. And I mean, obviously our government is not a Christian government, but it was founded upon Christian principles. And dealing with the congressmen and senators I know, I find their faith to be much stronger in many cases than the average person in other chosen professions. There's a lot of prayer, a lot of serious consideration for God's help and the decisions they make that are going to affect not only this country, but things that happen worldwide.
You have talked a number of times about the number of LCMS people in Congress, and you've drawn a conclusion from that. Could you do that again?
Well, actually, we only have 3 LCMS members now. We have Senator Conrad Burns from Montana. We have Congressman John Shimkus from Illinois. We have Congressman Riker from the state of Oregon. We've had others over the years, but right now there's only 1 Wisconsin Synod member, and I think there's probably another 10 or 12 ELCA members in the entire United States Congress. As a matter of fact, I saw one time that there were less Lutherans per capita involved in the United States Congress than any other church except the Greek Orthodox.
Now, you're not advocating that we start to go to the government and tell them what they ought to do about this, that, or whatever.
Absolutely not. I think the church should speak out strongly on moral issues. For example, we have to be terribly concerned when there's still almost 1 million babies being slaughtered every year in this country. That is a clear moral issue. When it's family values, traditional marriage, the church should speak out. But the church certainly should not tell the state what to do, any more so than the state should tell the church what to do. But that doesn't mean that individual Christians, be they pastors or laymen, should not be involved in their government to try to exert as much influence as they can on the decisions that are made that might affect the country.
That's probably truer today than it was decades or a century ago.
Oh, absolutely. Because you have, like for example, a lot of folks don't realize the ACLU was actually started by a man named Baldwin, whose grandfather was a strong anti-Christian. I think he claimed to be a Unitarian or something like that, or Universalist. But they, from the very beginning, have tried to destroy all evidences of Christianity or any Christian or Judeo-Christian principles in our society. They don't just limit it to Christians. I mean, not only are they opposed to having a Christmas tree, or even red and white in some cases, strings of lights, or a memorial or whatever in the public square. I mean, they simply want to stamp out all kind of religion. We just had a recent situation where that the chaplains in the Navy and the Air Force were told they could not say their prayers in Jesus' name. Now, the Congress just put in the defense authorization bill just last week, and with only 30 or 40 nay votes, telling them that they cannot tell the Christian chaplains that they cannot pray in the name of Jesus.
There's a lot of information like this that you and I just won't get if we just read the newspaper or listen to the radio news as we're driving. This takes a little effort on our part, but it's a real blessing to have a person like you, Bill, on the front lines for this, and I think we need to join you more and more in this interest in the left-hand kingdom. For our viewers, let me ask you this question. We have just heard the Abramoff scandal and some other lobbyists. How are your fellow lobbyists? How should we, church people who are interested in morality, view that situation?
Well, I'm actually glad that you asked that question, because this is such a small aberration of what's happened over the years. I've been in Washington for 35 years, and I honestly believe that over those 35 years that the members of the House and the Senate, and I've known an overwhelming number of them, most all the Republicans and a lot of the Democrats over the years, and I believe that generally speaking we elect people that are just a cut above average. Now, obviously, when you have a bad apple, whether it happens to be a lobbyist, a congressman, or a senator that does something wrong, it gets so much publicity that everybody says, oh, Washington is terrible, it's immoral, it's corrupt. That is the furthest thing from the truth. I'm sure if you go into any other profession, and I hate to admit this, even into the ministry, you would probably per capita find more bad apples than you will with people that are elected to represent us in the United States Congress. By and large, they're very good people. By and large, the lobbyists are very dedicated people. Most of them have some background in government. They worked on the Hill. that kind of thing. And they are in Washington because they believe in our form of government, and they want to do what they can to make things better for our children and our grandchildren.
Looking back at 46 years since you became an alumnus of Concordia Seminary, and your distinguished and different career than most of us have followed since we graduated, what would you say the Concordia Seminary should do in the years ahead?
First, let me say what I think Concordia Seminary did for me. I think it was the absolute turning point in my life because I learned good, sound biblical theology at Concordia Seminary. I learned how to get along with people, I think, to communicate, to express your views forcefully without antagonizing people, hopefully. All of those things are terribly useful in life. And I think the same thing. I do believe that you ought to consider having some civics courses, that sounds very elementary, in the seminary, saying, look, you're a pastor and you're the shepherd of your flock, and obviously you don't want to preach any politics from the pulpit. But as a citizen, you ought to be an example setter. If you're a Republican, be active in the Republican Party. If you're a Democrat, be active in the Democrat Party. But we need Christian people as leaders active in the political process to make it work the way that the founders of this great nation intended for it to work.
Well, thank you for that advice. And on the suggestion for the future, somehow I think we will be trying to do exactly what you advised. Well, thank you very much, Bill, for joining us on this Semcast, and blessings to you, distinguished alumnus that you are, and thanks to you for joining us here at Semcast. Be sure to view other Semcasts that are available for you at the Concordia Seminary website, www.csl.edu. Just look under the resources link. I certainly hope to see you again, and until that time, God go with you.